Thanks for joining us. My name is Mike Mahannah. I'm the U.S. Country Manager here at Fast4, and joined with me today is Sue Byrne. And Sue has been involved in our implementations for quite a few years, has seen quite a few things when it comes to implementing the scan and capture solution. And so we're going to talk about, if you are looking at or have signed up for implementing a scan and capture solution, what are the things that you should be taking a look at or what you should be considering? So Sue, thanks for joining. And I am excited to talk about this because I know that you're a wealth of knowledge and certainly appreciate your insight. So
thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So a couple things, we'll jump right into it. What are the things that, when you are looking at implementing a OCR or an AP automation tool that you should be considering? And so we'll talk about those. The first one, I think, is, really, how will the vendor invoices be delivered? And so I know with our solution, they get delivered via email, and the system will store it in NetSuite. But, sometimes if you're looking at just AP automation in general, you should be looking at, okay, where is this going to be stored? How will I use this afterwards? And Sue, as you work with customers during the implementation, what are the things that you've seen customers say that they like or don't like, or seem to are surprised by where the documents will be stored or how they will be delivered?
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit that they see is that everything's within the incoming transactions within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So just by forwarding the emails, it's really straightforward solution. Everything's scanned and captured, and the information's clear for them when returned. Now, the storage itself, there's a dedicated folder that we create within NetSuite, and everything's stored there. And the other benefit, once the process through, is that the files are also accessible on the vendor. So under the financial transactions, everything's there and it's always side by side.
Yeah, I think just to tout in our own little horn here, so to speak, that, or toot it, is that it really is, it's a native solution, and it does really interact really well with the application. And so I think that goes a long way. So good. So, I think one of the other things that customers should be looking at when they are implementing an OCR solution is, what is their time constraints? Like, are there things that operationally that are coming up that would inhibit them? Or how many resources? Do you have a project manager? Do you have an analyst who's going to be involved in the project? And I'm sure, Sue, that you've seen quite a few, both amazing and probably not so amazing stories in this aspect here. So what's your thoughts on that? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we always have a really good, let's say, solution where we've got the project managers are involved, the end users during the walkthroughs. Where we don't get such a good situation is if the end users aren't included and then suddenly they go live.
Right.
Then it's quite an eye-opener, and then they resorted to either additional meeting or the knowledge base, which is of course a wealth of information. But if we have everybody in from the start that's going to be using the system, then it's always a win on both sides.
Have you seen some situations where, they sign the deal and then they're ready to get started, but then they run into year end or they run into quarter end, and it might be a delay of a few months? Have you seen that situation?
Yeah, we've seen that quite a few times. It can be that it's a new ERP installation, so there can be delays with that. Or, like you say, year end, or this, we've had furlough, of course, in the UK recently. So that automatically caused 6 month delays with some customers. So we basically put them on hold and continue with the rest. And then when they're available and they're ready, they just come back and let us know, and we start back up.
Good. Good. I mean, I think that it's great to have that flexibility, to kind of, meet the needs of the operations and still get the project closed. So I think that's great. So the next topic we want to take a look at is, you've got this AP automation tool, and it's entering bills for you. And then how do those bills get approved? And I think one of the things we see, people are coming from a manual system where bills get emailed to somebody and then they approve it. And then they enter the bill, or they're coming from a third-party system where the approval was done in there, or they might be approving bills in NetSuite. And NetSuite has a great bill approval process. And I think with our solution, because it is native, it flows right into the bill approval. But these are things that they should be considering. And I think, Sue, what have you kind of seen there where, do a lot of people consider changing their bill approval process in light of the functionality that they're achieving?
Yeah, I think quite often when we're doing an implementation, we'll have all the invoices loaded, a PDF scanned, and all the data then it's basically scanned and proposed information. Yep. So at the moment that they're going to hit that save button and they're happy with the information to create, suddenly it's, oh, the bill's created. We need to go through an approval process. So typically, currently they go with their NetSuite consultants and they'll have a small workflow put in place to help with that.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where it's a balance, right? I think that if you said, hey, let's take advantage of what's happening here and make some changes. The other side of it is you could make a lot of changes and try to, and it would potentially delay the implementation itself. And so because it is, you are using NetSuite's native bill approval, like you said before, I think you can say, okay, well, let's get this in, let's keep it simple. And then we can have our consultants or our analysts make those changes later as we go through it. So I think that's a great point. But do take advantage of some of the, system changes that are happening there. So when we do look at some of the other changes, not only bill approval, but then, some data enhancements. And I know when we were prepping for the session, we were talking about some different ideas. And I like the one that you said, do I want to make changes to something like how I name my POs? Do I want to change them? And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, POs can be quite a topic really during the implementations, because we'll get some vendors and on there, there'll be no reference. So we're looking at the keywords. There's nothing that indicates it's a purchase order. So in that situation, if it's not possible to make the enhancements by the vendors, then we look at, are you using a unique string? So is it like 2 letters, 5 numbers, or something specific? And then we can do something with that in our OCR tool. So it's going to then look at everything on the PDF and say, hey, that's definitely a purchase order, and it's going to use that information.
And NetSuite does have the capability to vary that by subsidiary, which also helps. So if you have a multiple subsidiary situation, you can enhance or increase the accuracy of the application by making some potential changes there. What about vendor setup? So I know that our OCR tool does more than just read the name, and obviously the name is important, but there's a lot of other things on the vendor that could be changed or updated. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the vendor detail, we're looking at the vendor name, the address, but we really validate also looking at VAT IDs, IBAN, bank account, and if there's an email on the actual vendors as well. If the domain isn't, say, for example, Gmail, then we'll have that to also validate against. So then your recognition's a lot better to match back into NetSuite.
And I know that when we talk to customers or prospects about this, we say the implementation can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And I think that probably that vendor setup is probably the biggest factor for driving anywhere, that 2-week variability. And maybe you can talk about, I know when we do the implementation, that first time that we sync, we do have a tool that says, hey, here's some things that these vendors couldn't sync for whatever reason. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for the vendor data to be pushed across, so it's syncing in for recognition, we need absolute minimum as the vendor name and a country on their address fields. If that's missing, it's not going to be synced. So then you're going to get incorrect recognition because the scanning tool is clever enough to actually look for an address on the PDF. So if there's something very similar, you can also propose an incorrect vendor due to that. So the more accurate your data is, the more accurate your recognition is as well.
Good. One of the other things that, I think are kind of our final point here is really, as we look at this, what is the level of support that you're going to need? We do have a great implementation model. And I think that, but, you know, customers vary. I mean, you know, like I said before, if you've got a really small team of maybe one person, maybe you do need a little more support, and support not only during the implementation, but during go live, and then really kind of post support or post go live. You know, what does that support look like? And so maybe kind of talk about, you know, what a typical customer experience is here at Fast4.
Yeah, I mean, during the implementation itself, you've got your own implementation consultant. So they're your go-to person with any questions up until go live. And then for around the first month, we'd also still be that same person as your contact. And we'd be looking at any data quality issues that you're getting, that you report in. We can look at the enhancement for those. And if there's any gaps in training from the walkthroughs, then we can also look at doing an additional call just to cover off those gaps as well.
Good. And I know in our application, there's a button that somebody can submit a data capture quality issue. And maybe kind of talk about what that process looks like when somebody does click on that button during the transaction.
Yeah, so in the transaction, if, for example, you've not picked up the line items correctly, or an invoice number, a date, or, you know, certain fields, if they're using the enhancement button, it's typically, it just takes you to a screen. You type in there what the actual issue is, and you submit that. It creates a case. So the PDF and the XML with the details of what's been captured goes across to our quality team. They can identify the issues, do some enhancements, and then once they've confirmed, the next time that vendor is recognized a lot better. Good.
Good. You know, Sue, I think that, you know, what we wanted to achieve with this, you know, this video today really was just some insight of things that they should be considering, whether they've signed with us or if they're looking at, you know, implementing it. Any kind of parting thoughts on somebody that that was looking at or comparing tools and trying to compare the implementation? Any thoughts there?
Well, we've had customers that have been on other tools before and moved across to us. They're very, very satisfied straight away. Good. We've got, you know, it's because it's quite a knowledgeable tool and we can make enhancements in it. With most customers, it's achievable, and there's so many different languages that we can recognize as well. You know, we've got Hebrew in there, we've got, yeah, Romanian, you name it. We've got lots of things in, so it's all good. Good.
Well, so I appreciate your time, and you know, and not only today, but just in the implementations. I know we've got a lot of happy customers because of you know, what you've done for them, not only directly, but then in just some of the process that Fast4 follows. So again, thanks for your time, and thank you for watching this session, and take care.
Thank you.